Musician David Perry, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We are going to get to your new and debut album. It is about time, and have you talk about that. But wanted to kind of trace maybe your journey as a musician. I know, and I've been on your site and done some research on you. You started writing and recording songs when you were 14, and I imagine you became enamored with music and singing and playing before that. Can you talk about kind of how your love of music started, David, and how you actually started as a teenager writing and recording and kind of move forward from there?
Yeah, well, my first exposure to, as far as being a musician, was I had gotten a toy ukulele, um, and Wipeout had just come out. So it was summer of '63. And my father was a musician. He played stand-up bass in jazz bands, and he played guitar as well, and he always had a guitar in his closet. So Wipeout had just come out, and I figured out how to play Wipeout on the little toy ukulele. And so then I went over and grabbed my father's guitar out of the closet and played it on that. And then I started getting interested in playing guitar, and I was a fan of surf music. I bought the Safaris album and the Beach Boys album that was out at the time. But then everything went full speed ahead on the evening, like for so many other Americans, on the evening of whatever day it was, February 14th, Ed Sullivan Show, the Beatles. And I didn't even know who the Beatles were. But by the end of the show, I was like a fanatic, like so many other kids were at the time. So from that point on, it was like, full steam ahead. And I started writing songs, and I just gotten a guitar for Christmas. So I kept playing, and my father had a tape recorder that I started using that had a kind of unique feature for back then called Add a Track. It was a VM, Voice of Music tape recorder. And you could record one track on the left channel and then play it back and record something in sync with it on the right channel.
Oh, man. Yeah.
So that was pretty cool for 1964, and especially, for a kid in his bedroom. And so I do that. I play like a song, and I play the rhythm part, and then I lay the lead guitar part, and then I play it back, and then I play the bass line along with it, so you could hear all three parts. And then I got a little Emily little chord organ for I think the following Christmas. So I started learning a little bit of keyboards. And I think I was about 16 or 17 when I got into my first band.
Yep.
And it was called the Zoo. And they had a guitar player, so they taught me to playing bass. So I played bass, and I started recording my own songs. And then I bought a machine called the Tandberg, which was also kind of revolutionary at the time, and it could do sound on sound, which meant you could keep going back and forth, track to track to track.
Wow.
So I could record the drums on one track and then mix the drums in with whatever I was recording on the next track, like say add bass, and then bounce those two back down to the first track, add a guitar, bounce those three down to go back and forth. Of course, you were losing a generation every time.
Yeah.
And everything was pre-mixed. So if 5 generations in, you felt that the drums weren't loud enough or too loud, it's not too bad, you're stuck with it. So it did help you to learn how to pre-mix stuff. It was a good lesson in doing that.
Yeah. Wow. Now, and then you got into bands. I'm thinking you had some brushes with greatness. This was on the East Coast. You were in Connecticut, is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Who did you come across? Some names that we might know, and we're going to get into some people that you helped produce and some hits that you produced in the 80s. But who'd you come across back then that we may know? I'm thinking a few people.
Well, let's see. Well, the biggest name I came across would be Michael Bolton.
There you go.
We were in competing bands.
Wow.
I was in a band called Jake's Hope, and he was in a band called Joy. And he was like a rock singer. He wasn't the Michael Bolton that everybody knows now.
I remember that. Yeah.
He was a long-haired hippie rock singer. And actually, when I first met him was on the New Haven Green, the summer of '67. I was a hippie and he was a hippie, and we were hanging out on the green. And I didn't really get to know him that well, but he was there once in a while. And Jake's Hope had fired the lead singer, so they hired him. They were actually making some changes, and he came in, and I wasn't, to be honest, too happy about him coming in because I didn't really like his voice at the time. And I got fired.
It happens in music.
And then the band kind of broke up. It didn't really do much after that. And then he went on, and he tried to make it for years. And I admire the guy for his persistence.
Yeah.
I mean, he tried to make it as a heavy metal singer for years and years. In fact, there's a video that was on MTV in the '80s where he's like basically a heavy metal singer.
Yeah.
It got a lot of airplay, but nothing really happened with it. And it was after that he, I guess, decided to go more middle of the road.
Yeah. Yeah.
But as far as anybody else, I can't really think of anybody that I played in bands with. Well, I was in a band called Nebula, a three-piece top 40 band and the bass player was Steve Buslow. And he later he actually played with Michael Bolton. He left our band and joined Michael Bolton's band for a while. And then he ended up playing for Meatloaf.
I'll be darned. Wow.
So he was on tour with Meatloaf during, Meatloaf's heyday.
Wow.
And he's in any of the Meatloaf videos where it looks like they're performing live. He's in the band there.
I'll be darned.
And I think that's probably about it for anybody, whose name might have been heard by somebody else.
That's pretty huge. I remember when Bolton was doing rock and he changed, and it was stunning, but it worked out okay.
Yeah. I like his voice a lot better now than it was really ragged back then in the late '60s.
Yeah. I think maybe it was a square peg in a round hole in terms of what he wanted to do.
Yeah.
Somebody steered him in a different direction, and it was the appropriate direction. See, you moved out to Seattle, out to this area. Hey, Kat, how you doing? You gotta have pets, man. We have a dog and a cat. And I try to keep them out anyway when I'm doing my interviews. And you came out to Seattle. What brought you out to this neck of the woods?
Well, I went to work for a recording studio in New Haven, and I was there about 6 months, and it was in a little Italian neighborhood called Worcester Street, and it was right in between the two best pizza places in New Haven, and some people think the world, Pepe's Pizza and Sally's Pizza. Okay. And every time so I was working there for 6 months, and every time a band would come in, because I was working as an engineer and a producer occasionally, and a band would come in and record, and of course they'd say, oh, and not only is this a really good sounding studio, but the best thing about it is, like, when we get hungry, we can either go to Pepe's or Sally's for the world's greatest pizza. And back then the favorite topping was bacon. Okay. And it's not like the bacon you get out here on the West Coast where they put Canadian bacon on top, which is, like ham, basically. They would take like the raw pieces of bacon and just throw it on top of the pie and shove it in the oven. Oh, wow. So all that bacon grease that stays in the frying pan when you make bacon and eggs, it stays in the pizza. And boy, did it taste good.
Yeah, okay, that sounds good.
But he moved to Seattle, the owner of the studio, and I've said many times, I probably would have died of a heart attack long time ago if I'd stayed there any longer and kept eating, because I was eating that bacon pizza 3-4 times a week, because that's what the bands would always order. Yeah, addictive. Anyway, he had, I don't want to get too specific, but my best guess is that he had some dealings with the mafia that didn't go well. Yeah. And he had to get as far away from New Haven as possible. Okay. So he came in one day and he said, I'm moving me and my family in the studio to Seattle. And if you want to follow me out after I get the studio set up, you can do that. So I didn't have anything else going, and I enjoyed working in the studio. So I said, okay. So I went out to Seattle about 3-4 months after he did. And that's how I ended up here.
Cool. Now, when you got here, you worked with some people who, at the time, weren't big, became gigantic. Kenny G, the jazz clarinetist, one, and Sir Mix-a-Lot,
Uh-huh.
hip hop and rap, I guess. Number two, talk about connecting with those two guys and working with them and helping getting their careers moving along and to the road to fame.
Well, Kenny G, I didn't really have anything to do with helping him get along. He was I'd heard about him. I hired him because I needed two sax players for a session I was doing for Salazar.
Pardon me. Yeah, yeah.
And Kenny wasn't even the number one guy that you would call in Seattle when you were doing sessions and you needed a sax player. That guy was Grant Reeves.
Wow.
And again, I needed two sax players. So whenever I needed a baritone, I'd hire Grant and I'd give him extra rent a bari sax and he'd rent it. So that's how I knew Kenny. And then I hired him 3 other times to play on some stuff. The first time was just part of a 5-piece horn section. The other 3 times was to play solo.
Okay.
And all 3 times it was on tenor sax. He hadn't really switched over to the soprano sax or the alto sax that he was. No, it was actually the soprano sax. And the last time I tried to hire him, I think it was right after Songbird came out.
Okay.
And I called him up and said, "Hey, Kenny, I could use you on a session." He was like, "Oh, sorry, man, I can't do it anymore. I'm too busy." And his career was taking off. And I said, "Okay."
Taking off, yeah.
Yeah. And then Sir Mix-a-Lot, I had done a project right after We Are the World came out.
Wow.
I wrote a song called "Give Just a Little,"
Yeah.
and I gathered together a few people I knew, and we started making calls, and we got anybody that was a local celebrity in Seattle or a musician or a singer to come in, kind of like We Are the World did it on a national level. We did it. And we weren't the only, like I'd heard Portland did something similar too.
Okay.
So we did this song, Give Just a Little. And from that, I got a little bit of production work. And this band called me up and they wanted to do a song. I think it was called We the People or something. And they wanted to have some rapping and scratching on it.
Okay.
And I forget how Sir Mix-a-Lot came in. But anyway, he was the guy that came in and did the rapping and the scratching. And it was, of course, before he became famous.
Yeah.
And I think I might have had one other session with him, but I don't remember.
Okay. Wow, that's very cool. And then you produced, you talked about engineering and producing and working on the tech side, as well as being a musician. It looks like you were the recording force and the engineering force behind a couple of dance hits in the 80s, right? Can you talk about those?
Yeah, I was. We were still in the when the studio first came out to Seattle. The guy built it in the ground floor of a 2-level house right off of Lake Sammamish.
Okay.
And then we moved into a facility in Redmond, which is now where Microsoft is.
Wow.
And so this guy, Pete Salazar, came in and he had hired this guy that was the leader of a band called Grandma's Cookies.
Okay.
And it was a band that was basically mimicking the Andrews Sisters.
Oh, wow.
So Pete saw that some people were having success with doing disco version of old 50s songs or early 60s songs. So he wanted to do a version of 1, 2, 3. He had been a doo-wop singer back in the 50s, and at the time he was basically running an auto body shop.
Okay.
So he hired this guy from Grandma's Cookies to do the arrangement. And so they came in and I was just the engineer and recorded it. And it was okay. It wasn't that great though, to be honest. And so Pete brought in 2 of the top DJs in Seattle at the time, Dana Andrews, who ran the disco pool,
okay,
and this other guy. And they came in and they were saying like, well, you need to put a break here and a break there, and you got to do this here. And they were making all these suggestions, like radical changes.
okay.
And they were talking about doing these changes to what they already had laid down. And in sometimes as an engineer, it's not really the engineer's job to advance an opinion unless it's just so necessary that you can't not do it.
I've read a few books, talked to a few people. Yeah.
So I basically at one point said, all this work you're talking about doing on a track that's kind of weak to begin with, you'd be saving time and money and get much better results to just work these changes into a new arrangement and then start from scratch.
Yeah.
So at that point, the guy that was producing and arranging it from the Grandma's Cookies, he said, to be honest, I'm not really into disco, and maybe you should have somebody else, to take it over.
Okay.
So then Pete was like, oh, well, what am I going to do? And so I said, I'll do it.
Right here. Yeah.
So I worked out a new arrangement with all the changes that had been discussed, and it came out really good. In fact, I had asked the guy that was from Grandma's Cookies, I wanted to use some of his horn arrangements that I thought were good. Mm-hmm. And so he came over to my house the next day with the charts that he had written for the horns, and he was wearing a T-shirt that said "Disco sucks."
There were a few of them. Yeah.
So anyway, it came out locally, and then it got up to number 60 nationally.
Wow.
And then we did a follow-up, Let's Hang On.
Yeah.
And Let's Hang On got up to number 22 nationally on the Billboard dance charts.
Cool.
And I don't know if this is true, but I heard a rumor that Barry Manilow was in a disco and he heard Let's Hang On, the version that I did, and that inspired him to do his version, which was kind of similar to the one that I did.
But you didn't rip it off.
No, it was different.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know if it's true or not. I mean, that's just something I heard.
I'm going to say it is. That's very cool. I'm a big Barry Manilow fan. I got to say, I love your cap, Cavern Club, Liverpool. We were talking about Beatles before. I am a gigantic Beatles fan. So,
oh yeah, me too. I got this right at the Cavern Club 2 years ago.
I was going to say, I bet you did, didn't you?
Oh, it was a great experience walking in there.
Lifetime dream, David. One of these days, man, I'm going. Yeah, huge Beatles fan. So, okay, we got to talk about your new and first album, and it is called "It Is About Time." And it is about time, man. What took you so long, to finally put out an album of your own stuff? And reading, it looks like you wrote this stuff in the 70s and the 80s, and it has that feel and that vibe. And then talk about, it's just remarkable, David, doing all this on your own, all the instrumentation. You have the engineering and the producing background, so you put the whole thing together, technologically, and then and recording wise, and you had some people help you on background vocals, but you did all the lead vocals. Spill it out for us, man. What was this whole experience like? How did you do it?
Well, I've been doing like the one-man band thing for since back in the 70s. I had my own studio.
Yeah.
And I would do, I had a TAC 4-track, and I would just, lay down 4 tracks and then bounce them down, whatever. And then later on, I got an 8-track. And so, and I actually was offered a recording contract back in 1970 or 71 from Paramount Records.
Wow.
And the only artist that they had of any renown was Melanie.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure what happened. It was so long ago. I remember I hired an attorney, Walter Hofer, who had actually been the Beatles attorney in America when they first came over. Brian Epstein had hired him to be their attorney. So that was exciting for me to have the Beatles attorney. But I guess I don't know what happened, but it just seemed like it took forever to make some changes in the recording contract. And then by the time it was done, Paramount decided to shut down the record division because it wasn't really doing well, and just stick to movies. So that was the end of that.
Wow. Okay.
But anyway, so I probably just didn't have a lot of confidence at being an artist for a long time. I didn't have much confidence in my singing. My range is very limited, for one thing.
Good singers know that, though, David. But yeah, okay, sure.
But I finally got around to start recording, the songs and mixing and I did. There's actually 3 versions of the album. There's 2 versions of it. It's About Time, and then the final version came out a little over a year ago called It Is About Time,
Okay.
just to distinguish it from the first 2.
Okay.
The cover is basically the same, except there's a different modern picture of me.
Okay.
And I've actually, even beyond that, have remixed a couple of the songs from the album just for the video. I started doing videos for some of the songs.
Yeah, no, I've seen it. Yeah.
But I use Pro Tools at home, and it makes it very easy to do things that I wished I'd been able to do 20 years ago.
Yeah. It wasn't available. Yeah. What is your favorite? First of all, what all instruments have you mastered, and what is your favorite instrument to play?
Well, mainly I'm a guitar player.
Yeah, I knew that.
I play piano. I can play piano adequately enough to to sing and play some songs. I can get what I need down on tape. If not playing it live, I can program what I need to do. I play a little bit of drums. I've been trying to play more drums, but my timing is a little off. Back in the 70s, when I was doing a lot of sound on sound stuff, my drumming was at a much higher level than it is now. But fortunately, again, with Pro Tools, I can play the drum part, and if it's a little off here and there, I can just move it around and get it right in time.
Yeah.
And if you watch the video of me playing the drums, you can't even tell that, because I'm not that far off. It's not like I'm hitting the snare and then you hear it like a second later.
Oh, man, absolutely. Yeah. And then you played bass, like you were saying. A band needed you to play bass, and you started playing bass.
Yeah, I'm probably a better bass player than I am a guitar player, although my ego always made me want to be the lead guitarist. So.
Yeah, of course. Well, and now you've made the album. How can folks get it? You've got your own website. It's David Perry Tunes. That's PERRY tunes.com. And you've got the album for sale there. You've got videos. It talks about you, and that's where people need to go to get the album, right?
Yeah, they can go to davidperrytunes.com. I also have a YouTube channel for all my music videos, some covers, some originals. And that's David Perry Tunes, YouTube/David Perry Tunes. And I'm on Twitter, again, David Perry Tunes.
That's where I found you, yeah. Well, and then do you plan on playing live anywhere locally? In Puget Sound?
Well, I was doing these parties up before the pandemic hit.
Yeah.
At my house, and I've got a big screen TV. And what I would do is I'd take some of the videos that I had done, for YouTube, where I'm doing everything, and then I do a version without the lead vocal and without maybe the rhythm guitar or the lead guitar. Yeah. And then at the parties, I would do a show. So I'd run the video, I guess kind of video -1 or -2 through the big screen monitor.
Oh, cool.
And then I'd play along and sing along live to it.
Oh, cool.
So then people could see me on the screen playing all the other parts, and then they'd see me live singing the vocal. And I thought about doing that in clubs, but I just never got around to it. And then, of course, with the pandemic and all that, there was no point in even thinking about it for a while.
That's everything up. Yeah, for everybody. Well, that's cool. Well, it's been a pleasure talking to you. I want to say this again. The album, this is David Perry's first album, is called It Is About Time. Go to David's website, David Perry, PERRY, tunes.com. Everything about David is there. You can buy the album there. You can see the videos and listen to the songs that we've been talking about, plus more. David, thank you so much, man, for your time and your story. It's fascinating, and you never know where life is going to lead you. And so you thought you'd have your first album out a while ago, but the intention was, no, we're gonna ask for a little patience, and it's paid off. This is fun stuff. It's cool stuff, and people should go and check it out there at davidperrytunes.com.
All right. Well, thank you for having me, and you have a great day. And
Thanks.
oh, I'm on Amazon too, I think.
What's that?
I think I'm on Amazon too.
Oh, check out Amazon too. Again, David Perry.
And I might even be on Spotify. I don't know.
Yeah, but you'll find all kinds of different ways to branch off and find David on the net at davidperrytunes.com. David Perry, thanks again.
All right. Thank you.